Billionaire asked the black waitress to decode a message. Her translation saved his life. Seconds later, the elegant restaurant hummed with quiet conversation when 42-year-old tech billionaire James Mitchell collapsed at table 7, clutching his chest. Paramedics rushed in, but as they prepared to administer medication, James whispered something in broken Spanish, words that made no sense to anyone except Carla Hernandez, the 34-year-old waitress who'd been serving his table. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory as she recognized the desperate phrase. What James had muttered wasn't just random words. It was a warning about his medical condition that could mean the difference between life and death. In that split second, as emergency responders looked confused and precious time slipped away, Carla faced a choice that would change everything. She'd been invisible to most wealthy diners for years, just another face serving their meals. But now, this powerful man's life hung in the balance, and only she could save him. Where are you watching from tonight? 3 hours earlier, Carla had started her evening shift at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where she'd worked for the past 4 years. She moved gracefully between tables, her warm smile hiding the exhaustion that came from working 2 jobs to support her elderly mother and teenage son. The dinner rush was particularly busy, filled with business executives celebrating deals and wealthy couples enjoying anniversary dinners. Despite the elegant surroundings, Carla felt the familiar weight of being overlooked. Wealthy patrons often spoke around her as if she were furniture, discussing million-dollar acquisitions while she refilled their water glasses. James Mitchell had arrived alone at 8 o'clock, requesting the corner table where he could work on his laptop between courses. As the founder of a revolutionary medical device company, he was finalizing a merger that would bring life-saving technology to hospitals worldwide. Carla noticed his nervous energy immediately, the way his hands trembled slightly as he reviewed documents, how he kept checking his phone with increasing urgency. He ordered in perfect English but occasionally muttered to himself in what sounded like broken Spanish, though she couldn't make out the words from across the room. The merger James was completing wasn't just about money. His company had developed a breakthrough cardiac device that could prevent sudden heart failure, but the technology needed global distribution to save lives. The stress of negotiations had been taking its toll on his health for months. His doctor had warned him about pushing too hard, but James felt responsible for getting this device to market. Too many people were dying from conditions his invention could prevent. Carla's grandmother had taught her Spanish during summer visits to Mexico, along with stories about her work as a nurse in rural clinics. Those memories felt distant now as Carla focused on navigating between demanding customers and an impatient kitchen staff. She'd studied nursing briefly after high school but had to drop out when her father left and money became tight. Now, watching James work frantically on what seemed like important medical documents, she felt a familiar pang of regret about the career she'd never pursued. As the evening progressed, Carla noticed James becoming increasingly agitated. He'd barely touched his food and kept pressing his hand against his chest. His face had grown pale and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead despite the restaurant's comfortable temperature. Other diners continued their conversations, oblivious to the distress building at table 7. When Carla approached to refill his coffee, James looked up at her with eyes that seemed to be fighting some internal battle.
Are you all right?
"Are you feeling all right, sir?" she asked gently, her voice carrying the same warmth she used when checking on her mother.
Sir, can you hear me?
James started to respond, then paused, studying her face as if trying to decide whether to trust her with something important. He opened his mouth to speak, just as his phone rang with what appeared to be an urgent call about the merger. The moment passed and he turned away to answer, leaving Carla to wonder what he'd been about to say. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, but returned to her duties, unaware that within minutes, everything would change. The merger call brought devastating news that sent James into a spiral of panic. His business partner's voice crackled through the phone with words that felt like physical blows. The deal was falling apart due to last-minute regulatory concerns. Without this partnership, his cardiac device would remain trapped in development limbo, while people continued dying from preventable heart conditions. James had invested everything, his fortune, his health, his relationships, into this technology that could save thousands of lives.
Are you all right?
As he hung up the phone, James felt his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with stress. The symptoms he'd been ignoring for weeks suddenly intensified. His family had a history of heart disease, and his grandfather had died at exactly his age from a massive cardiac event. The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, having developed a device to prevent sudden heart failure, potentially experiencing the very condition his invention was designed to treat. Carla watched from across the dining room as James's condition deteriorated rapidly. His breathing became labored, and he kept touching his chest in a way that reminded her of her grandfather's final days. The memory hit her like a wave, sitting beside Abuela's hospital bed while she shared stories about recognizing the signs of cardiac distress in patients who couldn't communicate their symptoms clearly. Her grandmother had worked in clinics where language barriers often meant the difference between life and death. "Mija," her grandmother had said, "sometimes people can't tell you what's wrong in words you understand. You have to listen with your heart and remember that everyone's pain sounds different in their own language." James tried to stand but swayed dangerously, gripping the table for support. Other diners glanced over with mild concern, but no one moved to help. In their world, wealthy men like James were invincible. The idea that he might be vulnerable seemed impossible to consider. Carla felt her nursing instincts, dormant for so many years, suddenly surge to life. She'd seen this look before, this particular combination of fear and resignation. Without permission from her manager, Carla crossed the dining room toward table 7. As she approached, James looked up at her with eyes that had lost their earlier intensity. In that moment, she saw not the powerful billionaire who commanded boardrooms, but a frightened man who might be facing his mortality alone in a room full of strangers. "Sir, I think you should sit down," she said softly, her voice carrying an authority that surprised them both. James tried to wave her away, but his words came out wrong, a mixture of English and the Spanish phrases his former business partner had taught him years ago during their work in Latin American markets. The Spanish felt more natural when he was panicked, a linguistic quirk that had embarrassed him in business settings but now seemed to be his brain's default under extreme stress. If this moment of human connection and Carla's courage to step forward touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. That's when it happened. James's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed forward onto the table, then slumped to the floor. The elegant restaurant erupted in gasps and concerned murmurs as other patrons backed away, unsure how to help. Someone called 911 while others stood frozen, watching a powerful man reduced to helplessness in seconds. But as chaos swirled around them, only Carla heard the barely audible words James whispered in Spanish, words that would prove to be the key to saving his life. The paramedics arrived within minutes, their professional calm cutting through the restaurant's panic. Lead EMT Rodriguez quickly assessed James's condition while his partner prepared emergency medications. James was conscious but barely responsive, his pulse erratic and his breathing shallow. The team worked with practiced efficiency, but something was wrong. James kept trying to speak, muttering phrases that didn't make sense to the medical team. "He's saying something in Spanish," Rodriguez noted, "but I can't make it out clearly."
Are you all right?
Carla stepped closer, her heart pounding as she listened to James's weakening voice. The words were fragmented, barely whispers, but they stirred a memory from her grandmother's stories. Abuela had told her about patients who, in moments of medical crisis, would revert to childhood languages or fragments of phrases learned long ago, sometimes revealing crucial medical information their conscious minds couldn't access. "Allergico, penicillina, mata," James whispered, the words so faint they were almost lost in the commotion. Rodriguez was reaching for a standard antibiotic injection, the same penicillin-based medication used in most cardiac emergencies. It was protocol, fast-acting and effective for most patients. But Carla's blood ran cold as she finally understood what James was trying to say. Her grandmother's voice echoed across the years. "Always listen, mija. Sometimes the most important thing a patient tells you is what they whisper when they think no one can hear them." "Wait," Carla called out, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "He's saying he's allergic to penicillin." that it could kill him. The paramedic paused, syringe in hand. "Are you sure? We need to act fast, and this is standard protocol." Carla knelt beside James, her hand gently touching his arm. In that moment, she wasn't just a waitress in a fancy restaurant. She was her grandmother's granddaughter, carrying forward decades of medical wisdom and cultural understanding. She listened again as James continued his fragmented Spanish, and this time she heard something else. "Corazon artificial, dispositivo," he whispered. "He's also saying something about an artificial heart device," Carla translated, looking up at the paramedics with growing urgency. "I think he has some kind of cardiac implant." Rodriguez immediately shifted his approach, pulling out a different medication while his partner grabbed additional equipment. In cardiac patients with implants, certain medications could interfere with device function, and penicillin allergies could trigger anaphylactic shock that would overwhelm an already stressed heart system. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Wealthy diners who had initially seen Carla as invisible now watched in amazement as this humble waitress potentially saved a man's life with knowledge they didn't possess. Her manager stood slack-jawed, realizing that his employee had skills and awareness far beyond what he'd ever recognized. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your knowledge or background helped someone in an unexpected way? Share your story in the comments below. As the paramedics worked with their new information, James's condition began to stabilize slightly. The alternative medication Rodriguez administered was working, and knowing about the cardiac device helped them adjust their treatment approach. But they weren't out of danger yet. James needed immediate hospital care, and the window for preventing permanent damage was closing rapidly. The next few minutes would determine whether Carla's quick thinking had truly saved his life or merely bought them precious time. The ambulance race to the hospital felt like an eternity, but Carla's translation had bought them the crucial minutes needed. At the emergency room, Dr. Patricia Williams took charge of James's care, immediately recognizing the significance of the waitress's information. The penicillin allergy alert and knowledge about his cardiac device allowed the medical team to tailor their treatment precisely to his needs. Without this information, we would have administered standard protocols that could have killed him, Dr. Williams explained to the hospital staff. The combination of his allergy and the cardiac implant created a perfect storm, one that was avoided because someone took the time to truly listen.
Ambulance at the Grand Foyer immediately.
As James stabilized in the cardiac unit, he learned the full scope of how close he'd come to dying. The stress of the failed merger had triggered a cardiac episode that his own device had helped prevent from being immediately fatal. But it was Carla's ability to translate his panicked Spanish, words he barely remembered learning during business trips, that had prevented a medical disaster. 2 days later, when James was released from the hospital, his first stop wasn't his office or his mansion. He returned to Romano's during Carla's afternoon shift, carrying a folder that would change her life forever. The restaurant seemed different now. Other staff members looked at Carla with newfound respect, and even the manager who'd barely noticed her for 4 years now sought her input on customer needs. "I need to thank you properly," James said, settling into the same corner booth where everything had changed. "But first, I want you to know that the merger went through. My partner realized that if my device could help save my own life, even indirectly, then we needed to get it to market immediately." Carla felt tears welling in her eyes. "I'm just glad you're okay. Anyone would have done the same thing." "No," James said firmly. "Not anyone would have known what those words meant, and not anyone would have had the courage to speak up to paramedics and potentially challenge medical protocol. You saved my life because of who you are, your background, your knowledge, and your willingness to act when it mattered." He opened the folder and slid a document across the table. "I've been thinking about this for 2 days. My company's medical devices are amazing, but they're useless without people who understand patient care. I want to offer you a position as our Director of Patient Relations, but more importantly, I want to pay for you to complete your nursing degree." Carla stared at the job offer, her hands trembling as she read terms that would allow her to support her family while pursuing the career she'd always dreamed of. The salary alone was more than she made in 2 years of waitressing, but the opportunity to work in healthcare again felt like a gift from her grandmother's spirit. "There's one condition," James added with a smile. "I need someone on my team who can truly listen to patients, especially when they can't communicate clearly in English. Someone who understands that healing requires more than just medical knowledge. It requires compassion and cultural awareness." If you've been moved by this incredible story of connection and second chances, please subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales like this one. The merger that had nearly killed James was now complete, and within months his cardiac devices would be saving lives in hospitals worldwide. But he knew that none of it would have been possible without a waitress who took the time to truly hear what he was saying. 6 months later, Carla walked through the halls of James Mitchell Medical Center, wearing scrubs instead of a waitress uniform, her nursing school textbooks tucked under her arm. The scholarship James had arranged allowed her to attend classes during the day while working in the patient relations department in the evenings. Her unique background, understanding both the service industry and healthcare, made her invaluable in helping patients feel heard and understood during their most vulnerable moments. The cardiac device that had helped save James's life was now being used in hospitals across 3 countries, and the success stories poured in daily. But for James, the most meaningful outcome wasn't the business success or the lives saved by his technology. It was watching Carla flourish in an environment where her compassion and skills could truly shine.
It's all right, sir.
"She has a gift," Dr. Williams often told her colleagues. "Carla can calm anxious families, communicate with patients who speak limited English, and somehow always knows when someone needs extra attention. She's exactly what our profession needs more of." Carla's mother cried with pride when her daughter graduated from nursing school the following year, and her teenage son beamed as he watched his mom receive recognition for academic excellence. The waitressing job that had once felt like a dead end had turned into the bridge that led her to her true calling. On the anniversary of that life-changing evening, James and Carla met for coffee at a small cafe near the medical center, a far cry from the elegant restaurant where they'd first encountered each other. James looked healthier than he had in years, the stress lines around his eyes softened by the satisfaction of meaningful work and a brush with mortality that had realigned his priorities. "I keep thinking about what my grandmother used to say," Carla reflected, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "She believed that we're all placed exactly where we need to be, exactly when we need to be there. I thought I was just working as a waitress to pay bills, but maybe I was really there to save your life so you could save others." James nodded, understanding the profound truth in her words. "And maybe I needed to almost lose everything, my health, my business, my life, to realize that success isn't just about building something great. It's about recognizing the greatness that already exists in people around us." The medical center's patient satisfaction scores had soared since Carla joined the staff. Families frequently mentioned her by name in their feedback, describing how her presence had made frightening medical situations feel more manageable. Her ability to bridge cultural and linguistic gaps had become legendary among the staff, and medical students often shadowed her to learn her techniques for patient communication. As they finished their coffee, both James and Carla understood that their story was really about the power of human connection. In a world that often feels divided by wealth, language, and social barriers, a moment of genuine listening had created ripples that continued to spread outward, touching lives they'd never even meet. Their friendship had grown from that crisis moment into a partnership that was changing how medical care was delivered, one patient conversation at a time. And somewhere, in a small clinic in Mexico, the spirit of an elderly nurse who had taught her granddaughter to listen with her heart was smiling. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video. Share your thoughts in the comments about times when listening made a difference in your life, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey of human connection and second chances.